Do you accept that this is a necessary measure, the quantitative easing? And if it means that your pensions and your savings are just bumping along the bottom, then so be it. One man who doesn't think that we should be accepting it is Simon Rose from Save Our Savers. His group were standing outside the Bank of England yesterday with a giant sacrificial savings pig called Bertie in protest. Good morning to you, Simon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Explain to us just exactly what that protest was about, if you would.
Well, the problem is, from our point of view, is that savers and pensioners and anybody on a fixed income who's been sort of cautious and prudent and tried putting by for a future, like you and your daughter, is essentially being sacrificed. We've got inflation running massively ahead of low interest rates. Savers and pensioners are not the people who got us into this financial crisis. It's the people who borrowed imprudently. And yet we're in a situation where we're being asked to pay, because what we've got at the moment is a situation where, in essence, your daughter's money and everybody else's who's saved is being taken from them and given to the borrowers because interest rates are so low. We just think that's an appalling situation. It's not only is it actually unfair to existing savers, but savings are vital to the economy. Savers don't, by and large, put their money under the bed. They give it to the banks and the building societies, who then go on to lend it to companies and to people and to fuel the economy. And when you're making the savings environment so difficult, well, and when you look at that statement of your daughters, you think, well, why bother saving? Well, if savings don't exist, then really the country is in an even deeper mess than Mervyn King would have us believe.
I mean, I'm sure there's many, many people who are in a worse situation than my daughter's account. I mean, give us some sense of perspective here. How much are people losing out? And who are we talking about? Are they people that have got money to kind of not burn, but money to spare anyway?
Well, obviously some savers are fairly wealthy. And the wealthier you are, probably the easier you find it, at least to try and mitigate the effects of inflation. But we're talking about pensioners, people on fixed income, even people just starting out in life who want to put money by, or if you want to save for next year's holiday. There was a woman at the demonstration yesterday who, until her MP intervened, because she'd been a sort of married woman and because of the special, circumstances prevailing in the days when, it was the man expected to be the breadwinner, when she retired, her pension was 22 pence a week until an MP intervened to help. It's still not very good, but, how do people cope? The people least able to cope, unfortunately, are the ones at the margins of society, the ones who are less well off.
But Simon, we know, and we've been told by many different people, and again yesterday by Mervyn King, the Governor of the Bank of England, we are in one unholy mess here. The greatest financial crisis ever, he's saying, potentially. Time's tough for everyone. Are there any alternatives?
Well, we think there are. We just do not believe that this business of having record low interest rates is working. We've had 0.5% base rate set by the Bank of England for nearly 3 years now. Have you seen it causing the economy to pick up? No, absolutely not. The problem is it's almost creating a dam across the economy and stopping it working. We've been hearing, I heard from the Chancellor on the Today programme this morning, one of the problems is that the banks won't lend to small and medium-sized businesses. Well, that's got nothing to do with the interest rate. Those companies would be quite happy to pay a decent interest rate, but they just can't get the loans. Well, at the same time, if banks actually had rather more money because they're offering a decent rate to savers, then that would be a solution. We don't think low interest rates are right. We think there should be a more natural level which will encourage savings and thus get money moving again through the economy. I was talking to a chap from one of the big building societies the other day and said, well, what's your view about interest rates? And he said, well, we want them higher because our margins would be better. We'd be that much better off. So it seems everybody except the Bank of England, well, not everybody, that's unfair, but most people would actually be much better off if interest rates were higher. And one other thing I must mention is that the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee has a legal remit, and that remit is to bring inflation down to the government's target. Well, the government's target is 2%. Inflation is over double that and due to head higher. So the Bank of England is actually not even doing what it is legally obliged to do. I just went into the Bank of England Museum yesterday when we were having our demonstration to pick up a leaflet on quantitative easing to see how they explain it. And in their booklet it says, low and stable inflation is crucial to a thriving and prosperous economy. The Bank of England aims to keep inflation at the 2% target set by the government. You talked about increasing confidence among politicians and bankers, but that's not the problem. 2/3 of our economy, of GDP, comes from the man and the woman in the street. Now, do they have confidence? Is what the Bank of England doing going to inspire them with confidence? Nonsense. After what the Governor of the Bank of England said yesterday, they are going to be terrified. What really concerns me is, we've got members, Save Our Savers is open to anybody, so do please, come to the website and have a look and carry on the discussion. But, I remember one email from a guy saying that, his savings, he'd got some sort of fixed interest savings, they'd all dropped out, he was handicapped, he'd got kids, he had got a house, but he didn't know how he was going to manage, and he felt he was just going to sell up everything, spend the money, and live off the state. Well, if this environment continues for much longer, then the savers we've got are just going to throw up their hands and say, okay, look, I've done the right thing. Politicians keep telling us that we're supposed to save. Osborne and Cameron only a couple of years ago were saying Labour are being unfair to savers. We're going to help savers. We believe savers are essential to a strong economy. What happens when they're in power? Well, they just forget us. They throw us to the wind. And it's really worrying. But I do wonder if there may be an alternative. I mean, this is completely pie-in-the-sky stuff, but we keep being told that small and medium-sized businesses are desperate to borrow money. Well, we've got all these savers who are desperate to lend money at a better rate than they're getting. Why can we not be bringing these two sides together? Because the one thing we get more than anything else is, I hate the banks. The banks are cheating us. The banks are unfair. The banks have put me in a low-interest account they didn't tell me. Can we not bring savers and the people who need to borrow together in some form of social lending? I mean, this does exist, but it's not very much social lending as for companies. And then just bypass the banks altogether. If the banks don't actually do what they're supposed to do and stand up and be counted when it matters, then let's just forget them and do it ourselves and go back to a different system where you can see the person you're lending money to and it's not some anonymous computer program standing in the middle.
Well, cut the banks out. Well, that's what do you think of that? 0500 92 95 00.